My husband got angry over a past cheating mistake I regret, and it ruined our family. I am a 52-year-old woman, and for this story, you can call me Lisa. My husband Tom is 53. We've been together for over 30 years and married for 28. We have 2 children, a 27-year-old daughter named Emily, and a 24-year-old son named Daniel. Tom and I had what seemed to be an ideal marriage, full of love, trust, and mutual respect. Tom and I met when we were teenagers. I was 19 and he was 20. He was my first love, my best friend, and the only man I had ever been with. We fell in love fast, and after dating for just a year, Tom proposed. We were young, but I was overjoyed. Our connection felt unbreakable. We decided to wait to marry until after he finished college, as we both wanted to build a solid foundation for our future. He was in his second year of engineering school, and I worked as a receptionist at a local law firm. We lived in a small town, and everyone knew everyone, which made our relationship feel even more special. Tom and I had a steady routine. He'd visit home on weekends, and during the week, we'd talk on the phone for hours. These were the days before smartphones and social media, so landlines were our lifeline. He talked about everything, our dreams, future, and how excited we were to start a life together. But as time went on, the distance began to wear on me. I was insecure, and although Tom never gave me any reason to doubt his loyalty, I couldn't shake the fear that he might meet someone new. I often suggested we get married sooner. Tom was practical. He wanted to wait until after graduation, which I understood. Waiting was hard. During this time, a new guy, Mark, started working at the law firm where I was employed. Mark was charming, funny, and paid me a lot of attention. At first, I dismissed his flirtations, reminding him and myself that I was engaged. After a few months, I started enjoying the attention. Tom was away, and Mark made me feel wanted. We began spending more time together during lunch breaks. And one evening, after Tom told me he wouldn't be coming home for the weekend due to a big exam, I agreed to go out for a drink with Mark. I wish I could say it ended there, but it didn't. That evening turned into a series of bad decisions. I went back to Mark's apartment, and we slept together. It was a moment of weakness, a mistake I regretted instantly. I was overwhelmed with guilt and disgusted with myself. The next morning, I swore it would never happen again, and I ended things with Mark before they spiraled further. After that, I buried the memory deep down and never spoke of it again. When Tom came home that weekend, I was determined to move past what had happened. We were happy, and I told myself that telling him would only destroy the beautiful life we were building. So, I chose silence. We got married a year later, and life went on. We had our first child, Emily, 3 years into our marriage, followed by Daniel 2 years later. Tom was a wonderful husband and father, and I put all my energy into our family. The years passed, and I convinced myself that my mistake was nothing more than a small misstep, long forgotten. For nearly 30 years, I lived with this secret. It was always there, lurking in the back of my mind, but I thought I had successfully buried it. That was until last month, when everything came crashing down. We were in the process of cleaning out our attic, going through old boxes that had been untouched for decades. Among the clutter was a small, dusty journal from my younger years. I had forgotten about it, but Tom, being the curious and thorough man he is, picked it up and began flipping through the pages. I froze. I hadn't written in that journal since before we got married, and I suddenly remembered that it contained an entry about Mark. I had written about the affair in detail, spilling my guilt onto the pages, thinking that I would burn the journal one day. I never did. Tom read it. I watched as his expression shifted from curiosity to confusion, and then to pure devastation. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, staring at the page, before slowly looking up at me with eyes full of disbelief and hurt. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice shaking. My heart sank. There was no point in lying. I nodded, tears already streaming down my face. I tried to explain, tell him how sorry I was, how it was a one-time mistake that had meant nothing, but he didn't want to hear it. He threw the journal on the floor, turned, and walked out of the room without saying another word. For days, Tom refused to speak to me. I tried to approach him, to apologize, but he avoided me. Our children noticed the tension, but we didn't tell them anything. I was desperate for forgiveness, but the pain in his eyes every time he looked at me made me feel like I had destroyed everything we had built together. Then one evening, after a week of silence, Tom finally spoke. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice cold and distant. Told me that my betrayal, even though it happened decades ago, had shattered the foundation of trust in our marriage. He said that he didn't know if he could ever look at me the same way again. I tried to explain how much I regretted it, how it had meant nothing, and that I had been faithful ever since. But it was too late. The damage was done. He told me he needed time to think and that we should separate for a while. And just like that, our family was torn apart. The days that followed were some of the hardest I had ever experienced. Tom moved into the guest bedroom and barely spoke to me. Felt as if I was living with a stranger. The man I had loved for more than 30 years was now distant, cold, and unreachable. I spent my days crying, trying to figure out how everything had fallen apart so quickly. I had always known that what I did was wrong, but I never imagined it would come back to haunt me like that. Tom's silence was unbearable. Every time I tried to talk to him, to apologize again, he would either leave the room or tell me he wasn't ready to talk. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt heavy with tension. Emily and Daniel were adults, living their own lives, but I knew they would notice something was wrong if they came over. I wasn't ready to tell them. How could I explain that I had betrayed their father so long ago and was now paying the price? One night, about a week after Tom found the journal, I found him sitting alone in the kitchen. He was staring at his coffee cup, lost in thought. I sat down across from him, my heart racing. Please, can we talk?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't look at me, but after a long pause, he spoke. "I don't know what to say, Lisa. I feel like I don't even know you anymore." His words cut deep. "I'm still me," I replied, trying to hold back tears. "I'm still the woman you've loved for all these years. What happened with Mark? It was a mistake. A horrible, stupid mistake, but it doesn't define who I am or what we've built together." Tom finally looked at me, his eyes filled with pain. "But it happened. You kept it from me for all these years. I thought our marriage was built on trust, but now I feel like everything was a lie." I reached out to take his hand, but he pulled away, making my heart sink even further. "Tom, I'm so sorry," I said, my voice trembling. "I've never stopped loving you. What happened with Mark meant nothing, and I've regretted it every single day since. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to hurt you, and I thought I had buried it, that it was in the past." Tom shook his head. "You didn't give me the choice to know, Lisa. You made that decision for me. And now, after all these years, I'm supposed to just forget it?" His words echoed in my mind, and for the first time, I realized how deeply I had hurt him. Keeping the secret had been a way to protect myself, but in doing so, I had denied him the truth. And now it was all crashing down around us. Tom stood up and walked out of the room without another word, leaving me alone at the kitchen table. I felt completely helpless. No matter how many times I apologized or tried to explain, I couldn't undo the past. The next few days were a blur. Tom stayed out late, sometimes not coming home until well after midnight. I didn't ask where he had been, though the thought of him finding comfort in someone else's company terrified me. I was too scared to push him further away. Part of me didn't want to know. One evening, Emily and Daniel came over for dinner. It was the first time we had all been together since the discovery of my journal. I was nervous. I could tell Tom was too. He had been distant with them, avoiding family gatherings since the whole thing had started. As we sat around the dinner table, Emily was the first to notice something was wrong. She glanced between us, her brow furrowed. "Are you guys okay?" she asked cautiously. "You've both been acting off." Daniel nodded in agreement. "Yeah, you're both really quiet. Something going on?" And I exchanged a look. I knew it was only a matter of time before we would have to tell them the truth. They deserved to know, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for the fallout. Tom cleared his throat. "There's something we need to talk about," he said, his voice flat. Emily and Daniel looked at each other, clearly confused. "What is it?" Emily asked. Tom didn't say anything at first, and I could see the struggle in his eyes. Finally, he spoke. "Your mother? There's something from her past that's come to light. Something that's shaken our marriage. Emily and Daniel both looked at me, waiting for an explanation. My hands were shaking and my throat felt tight. It happened a long time ago, I began, my voice barely steady. Before your father and I got married, I made a terrible mistake. I had an affair, and I've regretted it every day since. The room fell silent. Emily's eyes widened in shock, while Daniel's face hardened. You? You cheated on Dad? Emily asked, voice full of disbelief. I nodded, unable to meet their eyes. Yes, but it was so long ago. I've been faithful ever since, and I never wanted to hurt your father or our family. Daniel stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You kept this from us? From Dad? For all these years? He asked angrily. I thought it was in the past, replied, tears filling my eyes. I thought I had moved on, and that telling him would only hurt him. But now, I see how wrong I was. Emily looked at Tom, who had remained silent throughout my confession. Dad, what are you going to do? She asked softly. Tom sighed deeply. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know if I can get past this. The room was thick with tension. I had known telling them would be hard. Seeing the hurt in my children's eyes was even more painful than I had imagined. They had always looked up to me, trusted me, and now that trust was shattered. Emily stood up and came over to me, tears in her eyes. Mom, I don't know what to say. This is all just a lot. Daniel, on the other hand, was visibly angry. I can't believe you would do this. To Dad, to us, he said before storming out of the house. Emily followed him, leaving Tom and me alone once again. The silence that followed was deafening. The silence that followed was suffocating. I sat at the kitchen table, feeling like the walls were closing in on me. Tom didn't say a word. He just stood there, looking out the window with an expression of profound sadness. I wanted to reach out to him, to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. But I wasn't sure how. The conversation with Emily and Daniel had only made things worse, highlighting the depth of the fracture in our family. Tom finally turned to me, his face etched with exhaustion. Lisa, I don't know how we're going to get through this, he said, his voice barely a whisper. It feels like everything we've built is falling apart. I know, I replied, my voice choked with emotion. I never meant for any of this to happen. I made a terrible mistake, and I wish I could go back and change it. He shook his head, his eyes filled with despair. But you can't change the past, and now we have to deal with the consequences. We sat in silence for what felt like hours. Tom eventually retreated to his room, leaving me alone in the darkened kitchen. I spent the rest of the night tossing and turning, my mind racing with thoughts of what I had done and how I could possibly make amends. The next morning, Tom was gone. He left for work without saying goodbye. I wasn't sure if this was a sign that he was trying to avoid me, or if he simply needed space. I decided to spend the day trying to clean up the mess I had made, both literally and figuratively. I spent hours cleaning the house, hoping that somehow it would help to clear my mind and maybe even mend some of the damage. When Tom came home that evening, he was more distant than ever. He barely acknowledged my presence, simply going to his room and shutting the door behind him. I knew I needed to give him space, but it was so hard to see him shutting me out. That night, I decided to reach out to Emily and Daniel, hoping to make amends with them. I called them both, but they were still too hurt to talk. Emily's voice was strained, and she told me she needed time. Daniel was even more distant, saying he wasn't ready to speak with me. I felt a deep sense of loss. My children were angry with me, and my husband was emotionally distant. I was left with nothing but the overwhelming guilt of my past actions and the fear of losing everything I held dear. The days turned into weeks, and things didn't seem to improve. Tom continued to go to work and come home without acknowledging me. He had installed a lock on the master bedroom, and he was keeping to his own space. I stayed in the guest room, trying to respect his need for distance, while hoping for a chance to rebuild what we had lost. I continued to send Tom heartfelt messages, pouring my heart out in each one, but he never responded. It felt like I was shouting into the void, with no way to reach him or show him how truly remorseful I was. One day, as I was cleaning out the garage, I found an old box of family photos and mementos. I pulled out a photo album and began flipping through the pages, remembering the good times we had shared over the years. Each photo was a reminder of the love and happiness we once had, and it made the current situation feel even more painful. I decided to write Tom a letter, hoping that putting my feelings into words might help him understand my perspective. I spent hours crafting the letter, carefully choosing each word to express my regret, my love for him, and my hope for our future. I placed the letter on his desk, hoping that he would read it and see the sincerity in my words. That evening, I waited anxiously for Tom to come home. When he did, he found the letter and took it to his room without saying a word. I waited for him to come out, to at least acknowledge that he had read it, but he remained silent. The next morning, I found the letter on the kitchen table, folded neatly, but with no indication that Tom had read it. I felt a pang of disappointment but tried to stay hopeful. I knew that healing would take time, and I had to be patient. Meanwhile, my interactions with Emily and Daniel remained strained. They had both been distant, and while I understood their need for time, it was heartbreaking to see the distance growing between us. I tried to stay positive, hoping that eventually they would come around and understand that I was committed to making things right. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Tom came into the kitchen and unexpectedly started helping with the meal. It was the first time in weeks that we had shared any kind of interaction that wasn't tinged with anger or sadness. We worked side by side in silence. The only sounds were the clinking of utensils and the occasional sigh. As we sat down to eat, Tom finally broke the silence. "I read your letter," he said quietly. "It was touching." I looked at him, my heart racing. "Tom, I'm so sorry. I know my actions hurt you, and I can't tell you how much I regret it. I just want us to find a way to move forward." He nodded slowly. "I know you're sorry. I can see that, but it's going to take time for me to process everything. I need to figure out how I feel and what I want." I felt a glimmer of hope. "I understand. I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. I love you, Tom, and I want to work through this together." Tom didn't respond immediately, but he seemed to be considering my words. "We'll see," he said finally. "I need time to think." As the weeks passed, there were small signs of progress. Tom started talking to me more, though the conversations were often difficult and emotional. We began to slowly rebuild some of the trust that had been shattered, but it was clear that the road to recovery was going to be long and challenging. In the meantime, I continued to reach out to Emily and Daniel, trying to show them that I was committed to making things right. I sent them messages of love and reassurance, and I hoped that eventually they would see that I was sincere in my efforts to repair our family. Despite the challenges, there were moments of hope. Tom and I had begun attending couples therapy, which provided a space for us to talk through our issues with the help of a professional. It was a difficult process, but I believed it was necessary for our healing. One day, Emily and Daniel came over for dinner. It was the first time we had all been together in weeks, and I was nervous but hopeful. As we sat around the table, I could see the pain and uncertainty in their eyes, but there was also a glimmer of hope. "Mom, Dad," Emily said, looking at us both. "We know things have been really tough, and we're still processing everything. But we want you to know that we love you both and hope that you can find a way through this." Daniel nodded in agreement. "Yeah, it's been hard to understand everything, but we want to support you both as best as we can." Tears welled up in my eyes, and I felt a wave of relief. "Thank you," I said, my voice trembling. "I know we have a long road ahead, but I'm grateful for your support. I love you both so much." Tom reached out and took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a step in the right direction. We still had a long way to go, but for the first time in weeks, there was a sense of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to heal and move forward together. The road to recovery was still uncertain, but I was determined to keep trying, to show Tom and my children that we communicate our feelings and work through our issues. Tom remained guarded, but he was showing small signs of progress. It was clear that he was trying, and that gave me hope. Our sessions often began with Tom expressing his frustrations and feelings of betrayal. He spoke about how he felt our entire life together was tainted by my past mistake, and how he struggled with the notion that our love might have been built on a foundation of deception. I listened with a heavy heart, understanding that my actions had deeply affected him and shaken the trust we had built over the years. I tried to convey my remorse and explain that my past mistake did not define our entire relationship. I spoke about the love we had shared, the life we had built together, and the many moments of happiness we had experienced. It was challenging to bridge the gap between his pain and my desire to repair our relationship, but I was committed to putting in the effort. One day, Tom surprised me by suggesting we take a short trip together. He believed that a change of scenery might help us gain some perspective and provide an opportunity for us to reconnect. I was both excited and apprehensive. The idea of spending time together away from our usual environment was appealing, but I was also nervous about whether it would bring us closer or further highlight our differences. We decided to spend a weekend at a cozy cabin in the mountains, a place we had visited several times in the past. The cabin held many happy memories for us, and I hoped it would provide a backdrop for healing. As we drove to the cabin, the scenic beauty of the mountains and the crisp, fresh air felt rejuvenating. I found myself hopeful. This trip might be a turning point. The first day at the cabin was filled with a mix of emotions. We took long walks, reminisced about our past visits, and enjoyed the tranquility of the natural surroundings. There were moments of laughter and moments of quiet reflection. Tom seemed to be more relaxed, and I noticed small gestures that indicated he was beginning to soften. That evening, as we sat by the fireplace, I decided to open up about my feelings. I told Tom how deeply I regretted the pain I had caused and how much I wanted to rebuild our relationship. I expressed my love for him and my commitment to working through our issues together. Tom listened quietly, his eyes reflecting the flickering light of the fire. When I finished speaking, I took a deep breath and said, "Lisa, I appreciate your honesty and your efforts. It's hard for me to let go of the hurt, but I'm trying. I want to believe that we can get through this. It's going to take time." I nodded, understanding that healing was a process that required patience and persistence. We spent the rest of the weekend talking, laughing, and trying to reconnect. It wasn't a miracle fix, but it was a step in the right direction. We returned home with a renewed sense of hope and a commitment to continue working on our relationship. Back at home, we faced the challenges of daily life while trying to maintain the progress we had made. Tom was still distant at times, and there were moments when old wounds were reopened. However, we made an effort to communicate openly and honestly, using the tools we had learned in therapy to navigate our interactions. One evening, as we were sitting together in the living room, Tom turned to me and said, "Lisa, I've been thinking about our future. I know we still have a long way to go, but I want to work on rebuilding our trust and finding a way to move forward. It won't be easy, but I'm willing to try." I felt a surge of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Tom. I'm committed to working through this with you, no matter how long it takes. I love you, and I believe we can find a way to heal." Our journey to rebuild our relationship was far from smooth. There were setbacks and moments of doubt, but we continued to put in the effort to heal and reconnect. We attended therapy sessions regularly, and I made a conscious effort to show Tom my love and commitment in both words and actions. In the midst of our struggles, Emily and Daniel began to warm up to us again. It was clear that they were still processing their feelings, but they started to reach out and communicate more. We had heartfelt conversations with them, and I was grateful for their willingness to support us through this difficult time. One day, Emily called me and said, "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. I know it's been tough, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. I hope that things can get better for all of us." Her words brought tears to my eyes. I knew that rebuilding trust with my children would take time, but her support meant a lot to me. Daniel also reached out, and we had a long conversation about our family's situation. It was clear that he was still hurt, but he was also willing to work on mending our relationship. As the months passed, Tom and I continued to make progress. We faced challenges, but we also experienced moments of joy and connection. We celebrated small victories and worked through the setbacks together. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but we were committed to moving forward and finding a new path together. One day, as I was sitting in the garden, I received a phone call from Tom. His voice was softer than usual, and he said, "Lisa, I've been thinking a lot about our journey. I know it's been difficult, but I want to thank you for sticking with me and for working on our relationship. I'm starting to see a future where we can find happiness again." I felt a surge of hope and relief. Thank you, Tom. I'm grateful for your willingness to work through this with me. I love you, and I'm committed to making our future together as strong as possible. Tom and I continued to focus on our relationship, making a conscious effort to prioritize our marriage and our family. We attended therapy sessions, engaged in open communication, and worked on rebuilding the trust that had been shaken. It wasn't an easy journey, but we were determined to make it work. As time went on, our family began to heal. Emily and Daniel continued to support us, and we worked on strengthening our relationships with them. We celebrated milestones and cherished the moments of togetherness that reminded us of the love we shared. While the scars of the past remained, they became a part of our shared history, rather than a defining feature of our relationship. Tom and I learned to navigate the challenges and find joy in the present. Our journey was a testament to the resilience of love and the power of forgiveness. In the end, I realized that while we could never undo the past, we had the power to shape our future. With patience, effort, and a deep commitment to each other, Tom and I were able to find a path forward and rebuild the life we had once shared. The road to recovery was long and difficult, but it was also filled with moments of hope and healing. Tom and I emerged from the experience with a renewed sense of appreciation for each other and a deeper understanding of the strength of our love. Our family was stronger for having faced the challenges together, and we looked forward to a future filled with love and growth. As time continued its relentless march forward, Tom and I slowly but surely began to rebuild our lives together. The road we had traveled was arduous, marked by emotional upheavals and the need for constant introspection. Yet through it all, there was an undeniable sense of progress. Our relationship, while forever changed, was growing stronger and more resilient. We had committed ourselves to ongoing therapy, which provided us with the tools to navigate the complex emotions that still lingered. Our therapist guided us through understanding each other's perspectives and addressing the underlying issues that had surfaced. Tom and I both recognized that healing was not just about moving past the betrayal, but also about rediscovering the love and trust we once shared. One particular evening, as we were winding down from a long day, Tom surprised me with a gesture that spoke volumes about his commitment to our future. He had planned a special dinner at our favorite restaurant, a place that held many fond memories for us. Over the candlelit table, Tom reached across and took my hand in his. "Lisa," began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I know our journey has been incredibly difficult, and there's no denying the pain we've both experienced. But tonight, I want to focus on the progress we've made and the future we're building together." I squeezed his hand, feeling a mix of relief and hope. "I agree, Tom. We've come a long way, and I believe in what we have. I'm grateful for your willingness to work through this with me." Tom smiled, his eyes reflecting a warmth that had been gradually returning. "I've been thinking a lot about us, and I want to make sure that we continue to nurture our relationship. I know it's not going to be perfect, but I'm committed to doing the work." As we enjoyed our meal, the conversation flowed naturally, and there was a sense of ease between us that had been missing for a long time. It was a reminder of the connection we had always shared, despite the obstacles we had faced. In the months that followed, Tom and I continued to invest in our relationship. We made a conscious effort to create positive experiences and cherish the small moments of joy. We took up new hobbies together, explored different activities, and made time for each other in our busy lives. Our children, Emily and Daniel, also began to heal from the emotional turmoil that had affected them. We had open and honest conversations with them, and while it took time, they started to see the effort we were putting into mending our family. We celebrated milestones together, and the bond between us began to strengthen. One significant milestone was our 30th wedding anniversary. It was a moment of reflection and celebration, marking 3 decades of shared experience. We had planned a special celebration with our close friends and family. The event was filled with laughter, heartfelt toasts, and a sense of gratitude for the journey we had undertaken. During the celebration, I took a moment to speak about the journey Tom and I had been on. I expressed my appreciation for the support of our friends and family, and most importantly, for Tom's unwavering commitment to our marriage. As I looked at Tom, I saw a man who had faced incredible pain and had chosen to work through it with me. Tom, in turn, spoke about the challenges we had faced and the strength he had found in our relationship. He acknowledged the hard work we had put into rebuilding our trust and expressed his deep love and appreciation for me. It was a powerful moment that underscored the resilience of our bond. As the evening came to a close, I felt a renewed sense of hope and optimism for the future. The road to healing had been long and filled with obstacles, but we had navigated it together. Our relationship was far from perfect, but it was stronger for having faced and overcome adversity. Looking back, I realized that, while our journey had been marked by significant challenges, it had also been a testament to the power of love and forgiveness. The pain we had endured had given way to a deeper understanding of each other and a renewed appreciation for the life we had built together. In the end, Tom and I emerged from our trials with a sense of accomplishment and a stronger connection. We knew that our journey was ongoing, but we faced it with the confidence that we could handle whatever came our way. Our love had been tested, but it had also been fortified, and that gave us hope for a future filled with growth and happiness. As we moved forward, we carried with us the lessons learned from our experience. We understood that relationships require effort, communication, and a willingness to face difficult truths. We were committed to continuing our journey together, knowing that while the road ahead might have its challenges, we were prepared to face them as a team. With each passing day, we celebrated the progress we had made and looked forward to the future with hope. Our story, while marked by pain, was ultimately a testament to the strength of our love and the power of resilience. And as we walked hand in hand into the next chapter of our lives, we did so with a renewed sense of purpose and a deep appreciation for the journey that had brought us to this point.